3, 2, 1.
That was where my thinking was, and I'm not playing a rigged game anymore. I just want to burn this system down now because I can't win at it. And every time anyone else that doesn't have anything like the discipline I do, or, the focus, they'll just change the rules. They'll do a bunch of reckless, silly, childish stuff, and if they lose, the government will print a bunch of money and give it to them.
Welcome to Sat Chats, the Bitcoin podcast where we chat about sats. Sats are the smallest part of a Bitcoin, the same way pennies are the smallest part of a dollar. With Sat Chats, we are building the world's biggest Bitcoin welcome center to serve as your gateway to generational wealth. So, if you are brand new to Bitcoin, we want to chat about sats with you. Head to satchats.com to grab your slot in the studio today. I'm your host, Stuart.
And I'm your co-host, Anna Bevan. And with us today in the virtual studio is 138 Mechanic.
Bitcoin Mechanic, by the way, if you already know who you're looking at, you're like, wow, how is Sat Chats, tiny little Sat Chats for beginners, able to get Bitcoin Mechanic on the show? Well, it's thanks to none other than our boy number 108, JC. and loves Bitcoin and loves us. So thank you, JC. If you're watching this, shout out also to Simple Steve, who Bitcoin Mechanic loves. Everybody loves number 60 Simple Steve.
Oh, your best friend.
He's my best friend. I saw him last night and we were talking about Bitcoin. So Bitcoin Mechanic, for all of our Satillionaires who are being introduced to you for the very first time, why don't you introduce yourself before we get started?
So I'm an old school Bitcoiner, been around for a long time. I got in back thanks to the Occupy Wall Street movement. That's where I learned about it. And that was 2011 era. And I just got into the rabbit hole and went deeper and deeper and deeper, as you do. And you end up at some point, taking more and more responsibility around how the technology changes over time. And that's why I'm sort of getting more and more embroiled in various cultural battles that happen within it and stuff. So that's currently what I'm up to in the space. And there's a bunch of history too, like the previous fork wars, I guess you'd call it, and stuff like that. We'll get into all of it, but it's been better than fiat in my mind since I discovered it, and it remains better than fiat. And anyone that wants to save their, defer gratification by saving wealth has the perfect tool in Bitcoin. And that's always been the selling point, along with a whole bunch of other great things that Bitcoin does. I'll finish it there.
I mean, we're going to get the story of a man who went so far down the rabbit hole that he has decided to become a champion of Bitcoin. Like, let's go. This guy has gone. He's transformed into a hero for Bitcoin. For some, right? Other people, they're on the other side. But we'll see if we get into that. Let me jump back to, you said 2011. I thought the Occupy Wall Street was like right around the great financial crisis, or was that later on?
I don't know, because I was wondering the same thing. I thought it was like 07, 08, 09.
Yeah,
the crisis happened in 2008, but Occupy Wall Street didn't happen until 2011.
That's crazy. So did you participate in any of that business in New York City, or were you?
No, because it was a worldwide movement. So I was in London, and there was a big thing. Occupy London Stock Exchange was the equivalent we had there. There were a few hundred of us that camped out for some months at St. Paul's Cathedral in the city of London, which is a part of London, where, all the suits are, the Bank of England, all that stuff. That's where that whole thing happened. And that's where I found out pretty much about Bitcoin. But at the same time, like Max Kaiser had his TV show on Russia Today, the Kaiser Report, and his whole show was like down the road from where Occupy LSX was. And at the same time, Assange was kind of hanging around too. He was still under house arrest, so he wasn't there exactly, but he did show up to Occupy there one day. And then he soon after got, embroiled in a bunch of stuff where he was in the Ecuadorian embassy, which was also down the road from Occupy London Stock Exchange. So there was a whole hotbed of activity around like cypherpunks and, you know, anti, fiat and all that stuff, and anti-banks and all that. So that's what everyone was paying attention to. And I mean, if you look at people have done some interesting analysis, right? Because we've been embroiled in a culture war that's taken on everything. It's anti-immigration, it's the gender war between men and women, it's like racism is like the trend of people Google searching that shot up, and all of it feels artificial, right? Because we almost had it. We knew what the real enemy was. It was central banking. And suddenly we get just in an utter mess about trying to deal with wokeism and pronouns and all this absolute nonsense that everyone's been fighting about. You know, the 2016 Trump election and all that was just about this. Everything has taken us away from what the actual enemy was, and we were almost there. We had it. Occupy Wall Street was such a good tactic. It got infiltrated with communists, and then we got distracted, and it just turned into a complete mess. But Bitcoin was the solution that emerged as a thing that everyone could use to actually win the battle rather than just protest. And you know, we just got completely swamped and mired in fighting each other, and that, you know, we got. Bitcoin remains the solution. If Bitcoin wins, then all of this other nonsense dies, because most of it's just, you know, cultural infiltration of like woke values and all that stuff that everyone hates. None of that happens if you fix the money, because there's no one going to pay for it. So, you know, it remains the trunk of the tree of evil is just deal with the fact that money is broken, and then everything else is downstream of that. But now we're all just fighting about symptoms, and it's left versus right and all this distracting nonsense. So that was where we were, and that was the hotbed of activity. We really had it. We had it, and most people have kind of lost it now. So that's kind of my take.
Do you feel like it kind of, because I heard you use the term artificial there. Do you feel are you saying that central banks could sense that you were getting close, and then they engineered a whole bunch of distractions, or, you know, infiltrated your movement with people who were like kind of planted there? Like, do you think that this was a conscious decision to move the kind of the focus away from central banks?
Yeah, to some extent. But I mean, this is the thing. Nothing is a psyop or organic. Everything is a combination of the two, which is why people need it to be one or the other, which is why it's like, you're just a conspiracy theorist, or no, you have it completely right. It's all artificial. Everything's a mix, right? Bitcoin itself is infested with spooks. Some people think Satoshi was a 3-letter agency entity, right? But it doesn't matter, like, because you have some combination of whether it's a sincere movement or not. Same with Occupy, right? It was a total, you know, psyop of a movement. Anonymous was a massive deal. Do you remember, like, all those accounts that sprung up that were like, debate ideas, not people? So they would like, you know, all these accounts sprung up, and half of them are run by feds, right? But not all of them. So, you know, if anything's good, it gets co-opted by the feds. And you can even have the reverse happen, where the feds start a movement, but they lose control of it. So it's kind of interesting. You have a combination, really. So it's neither one nor the other is the answer to that question.
Okay. Now, camping out for several months in the heart of London can't be easy in terms of sleep, hygiene, nutrition, hydration, etc. And it made me think that something about that time must have really fired you up. And it sounds like central banks was what really fired you up. I mean, What made you decide to invest that much hardship into trying to change the world?
Because, yeah, I mean, that's the question. I was a musician. I was paying rent, not very much rent, but you know, the economy hadn't collapsed yet, and the charade was still going. So I had like £20,000, which is like $25,000 or something, and I had a normal bank account, and I was earning like a couple of £100 a month in interest, which was covering most of my rent. So I was working and I was growing. I was acquiring wealth. I was doing well as a young adult. I was like, I have a job. I'm a skilled professional. I'm earning money. I save it in a bank account, and that is helping me, pay for my life. And I'm building money, and I'm building myself up. And then 2008 happened, and they just went slash to the interest rates. And suddenly I went from earning like 70, 80% of my rent a month, from interest, paying my mortgage, not mortgage, my rent, to nothing. I started earning like 20 cents a month in interest because they completely slashed it. And then they printed the entire gross domestic product of my country and handed it to banks to bail them out. And suddenly everything got more expensive. All of my plan, you need if you want to play a game, and acquiring wealth and trying to like build yourself up is a game of sorts. And there's nothing worse to me than a rigged game where like you played by the rules of the game, you started winning, and then someone changed the rules on you. I'm like, this is bullshit. So that's what happened to me. I'm like, I looked at how the world worked. I did what I needed to do. I became skilled. I was earning money, and I was doing well for myself. Every year I could look back and be like, yeah, I've grown since last year. Like my net worth has grown. I'm living in a better place, stuff like that. And someone just arbitrarily went, oh, well, a bunch of people have been recklessly gambling, and now we're all communists because it's for the greater good that we bail out these banks. Otherwise, everyone will suffer. That's what they told us. They used this appeal to, it will be good for everyone if we just bail out the banks. And I'm like, well, now I have to pay the cost of that. They should have just gone bankrupt. They should have died because they made reckless gambles. The subprime lending crisis, they made houses cost a fortune more by lending people that couldn't afford to repay it the money to buy the house. It inflated the price of houses and meant so that I couldn't afford them anymore. And now that all failed, I have to pay for the cost of that, making it simultaneously harder for me to afford anything and impossible for me to have a savings account. Because you're just robbing it of wealth the whole time. This is rigged. I'm not playing this game. I don't want to play games where someone is going to be able to arbitrarily change the rules on me. Fiat is a rigged system. And I just was like, this is nonsense. Burn this down. So, and I'm going to talk about that a bit because it's really relevant, because Bitcoin has this, horseshoe theory where the radical left and the radical right are basically considered the same. I started out as a raging lefty, and Bitcoin is like, it does have some weird lefties in it. But, I completely flipped and became much more right instead than left. And that's all part of that process, because Bitcoin is basically the most conservative tool ever, because it allows you to conserve your wealth in a way that no one can screw around with. There's no shifting of goalposts for like misguided egalitarian purposes. So that was kind of what happened. If that all makes sense, that was where my thinking was. And I'm not playing a rigged game anymore. I just want to burn this system down now because I can't win at it. And every time anyone else that doesn't have anything like the discipline I do, or the focus, they'll just change the rules. They'll do a bunch of reckless, silly, childish stuff. And if they lose, the government will print a bunch of money and give it to them. I was like, this is just I'm not having this. I'm over with it. And Bitcoin was just the way out. Everyone was like, well, you can complain. You can sit in a tent in freezing cold weather in the middle of central London, or you can help grow this system, which will replace it. And I was like, that's the solution for me. I'm tired. Everyone here is a communist. I don't like communism. And I just fell out of love with the Occupy movement. And then, the tactic wore itself out as being useful anyway. And they slowly managed to get rid of all the protesters anyway. And I was like, well, I'm just going to go home and champion Bitcoin. So I started learning how that worked. And, had to learn what I now know about computer science and all that stuff. It took me a long time to self-teach and get all that stuff, ready, because now I need to have a decent amount of knowledge given the role I have in the community at the moment. I'm with no computer science background at all.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a fire inside you to go from musician to self-taught computer scientist who is now at the heart of this Bitcoin community debate that is I don't know, maybe way too deep for a beginner. But I was also thinking before your show, maybe not way too deep. Maybe mechanic is the way to introduce that to our beginners so that they can learn more if they're interested. But what I want to know, mechanic, is somebody in that movement talked to you about Bitcoin, and it sounds like you clapped onto it straight away. Can you remember exactly who introduced you to Bitcoin?
It came from 3 different people at once. First off, I was like a young 20-year-old interested in drugs, so someone told me about Silk Road. Second off, I loved WikiLeaks, and the only way to send money to them was through Bitcoin. Third off, Max Kaiser was being part of the Wall Street movement, and everyone there was talking about Max Kaiser. And he was only talking about Bitcoin. And fourth, there was actually a guy that came to the Occupy meetup, or whatever you call it, and set up a kiosk with a bunch of pamphlets and information about Bitcoin. And, he was explaining it, and like, it was funny, right? Because you had these old guys with like suits on walking home from their bank to go to their house in a part of London that's literally called Bank, which is where the Bank of England is. And they would all walk past us and be like, ugh, who are these stinking hippies? And one of them just stopped at the Bitcoin kiosk and was like, what's this? And there's this like young, bright-eyed ideologue just explaining how Bitcoin's great because there's no middleman and all that stuff. And he's like, this is nonsense. It's just going to get shut down. And the guy was like, well, it can't be shut down because it's decentralized. And the guy just couldn't grasp that. He was like, no, obviously if they don't like it, they'll just shut it down. And the guy just kept repeating it. Well, they can't shut it down. And the conversation just went round and round in circles. So that was, I don't know. I forget even what you asked me there. Sorry.
No. I wanted to know who introduced you, and it was kind of a conflict.
Yeah, that was the combo. And then, then after all that, it was Andreas Antonopoulos after that. He was like an early, evangelist for Bitcoin that did a bunch of conferences and stuff like that. And his passion and stuff was just unbelievably contagious. And actually, I got back into music at some point because I made the music that he played at the end of his videos for a few years.
Really?
Yeah, there was a song I think he stopped using it around 2018 or something, but there was a good couple of years there where the song at the end of every Andreas video was one of my songs.
Well, I was talking to Simple Steve about coming into the studio and doing a video with me where we review every single line of code in Bitcoin source code, and he kindly explained to me that would be like going through 500,000 lines of code and would take an incredibly long time, and he wasn't really about to make that happen with me. So I said, look, well, I've got to understand Bitcoin on a deeper, more technical level for myself. Even though this show is for beginners, I'm going down the rabbit hole as quickly as I can. And he ended up recommending Mastering Bitcoin by Andreas Antonopoulos. So I've got my copy of the 3rd edition, and I'm about to yeet myself into it so I can learn more. When you heard about Bitcoin from all of these individuals, how did you then go learn more? Did you go and watch Andreas' videos? Were there any aspects of Bitcoin, like its decentralization or permissionless nature, that you struggled with? I mean, what was that journey like for you to go from having heard about it to saying, okay, this is actually how we deal with the evil at the trunk of the tree?
So, I mean, I wanted to buy a bunch of it, but it was just a medium of exchange for me at the beginning, right? Because, as I mentioned, you could buy stuff with it. I hadn't been through a bull or bear market yet. I showed up just after it went above $1, and then it railed up to $37, and then fell back down again. And then it sat at like $3 for all of 2012. And for that period, that was when I really started paying attention to it. And the price just didn't really move that much. It stayed between like $3 and $5 for ages. That was the 2012 bear market, right? And there was just I was just buying it and spending it. It was just a medium of exchange for me that that couldn't be censored. I could send money to WikiLeaks if I wanted. I could buy weed with it if I wanted. You know, that was what I was interested in, right? So there was no like, I didn't understand all this Austrian school deflationary stuff like that. I didn't understand any of that yet, right? So I was just using it like I had a wallet. And the wallet software at the time, all that existed was just the Bitcoin node software. So that was my wallet. And your alternative was leaving it on places like Mt. Gox. And they were obviously shady. And not your keys, not your coins hadn't become a mantra yet. But I already knew that wasn't the way to do things. And I had some money on Mt. Gox at one point. And then I saw a post, you know, on Bitcoin Talk saying, I just had a withdrawal delay from Mt. Gox. That was a year before they collapsed. And I was like, oh, this is dodgy. And I pulled everything off. And then a year later, they finally collapsed. And I was like, well, who didn't see that coming? But actually, loads of people didn't see it coming. So that was quite surprising. But that was what Bitcoining looked like back then. You just ran a Bitcoin node and that had a wallet on it. And that was it. Like there was none of this like ETFs or, all these or hardware wallets or cold cards or anything like that. None of that exists. Sparrow, like all of this stuff came years later. Everyone that was a Bitcoiner just ran a node or they let the exchange hold onto their money for them, which is terrible, you know? So that was it. That's what it looked like. I just downloaded Bitcoin onto my laptop, opened the software, and it just synced up to the network. That was it.
Well, Mechanic and Bevan, all the satillionaires in the audience, if we could have a moment of silence for Bitcoin between $3 and $5. God, this is happening a lot recently where I would love to have been part of Bitcoin back in that time. But to your point, it wasn't like something, I mean, you weren't seeing it as this thing that was going to get to 100 grand one day. And it doesn't even seem like you were thinking about it in terms of an investment or wealth or anything. It was like for many people at that time, a cypherpunk-esque way to build a parallel system to replace the one that you did not like.
Yeah, it was censorship resistance. Like you couldn't get PayPal, you couldn't get kicked off this one. But PayPal is still the dollar, right? Like because Bitcoin's a payment network and a money. And at the beginning, it was just, oh, here's a decentralized pseudonymous payment system. It wasn't a deflationary currency yet. That was the bit that takes more nuanced understanding about inflation. I didn't understand what Keynesian economics was, and that money printing was an evil. Like I said, that was a big part of me getting into it. But the main compelling thing was just, it's an unriggable system. The deflationary thing hadn't really clocked for me yet, even though, as I explained, the fact that they were printing money was a big part of me wanting to get involved in Bitcoin. So it was just the fact that it was an uncensorable payment network for me right at the beginning. That was what made me go, this is great. They can't stop me sending money to other people, and they don't know they can't track me. That was the big deal for me.
So, Abe's, as a newer Bitcoiner, does that kind of stuff ever cross your mind? Like, hey, forget number go up. This is like a tool for changing the future. Or have you not gotten to that level yet? Or is that not even important for someone like you?
No, I like listening to you. I've never talked to anybody who like actually participated in Occupy. So like that's just fascinating. And then to hear how you went from like extreme left to extreme right is like you're sitting there watching, like it's happening in real time for you. At least that's how I'm interpreting what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't see Bitcoin as being massively useful right now. Like I'm not like, oh, I can use it to buy drugs, to like I don't know, not be kicked off stuff. Mm-hmm. That's not how I'm like interpreting or thinking about Bitcoin. The deflationary thing is what has hit for me more. And so I want to know when that hit for you, because like your evolution is just fascinating. Like I'm still sort of stuck on like, oh my gosh, she was actually at Occupy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like that's wild.
Mm. Yeah. So, I mean, the price did what it did, right? In 2013, at the end of 2012, we had the first halving, and there was loads of question marks around that, like what's going to happen. Like there was some miners wanted to ignore the halving and do a fork and carry on paying themselves 50 bitcoins every block forever, and some people were like they're going to do that, right? And then other stuff happened at the same time, and but at the end of 2012, it started creeping up. The price started going up like a lot. It went above $10 again, and I was like, it might never come back down here again. Maybe some of those people that, the Hal Finney quote, it might make sense to get lots just in case this thing really catches on. I was like, all right, I'll try and get a whole bunch of them. And, I bought what I could. And I had to send a little wire to Mount Gox, which cost me £25. I was like, man, this sucks. It's so expensive to send money. Like now, that's everything I bought then is worth like 100,000 times the price. Like literally, well, like 50,000 times, I would guess. But anyway, like that all happened, yeah. And then suddenly it became like a store of value thing. And it was like everything I ever spent is now worth a fortune, and I wish I hadn't spent it. So that kind of changed, but that's to Bitcoin's detriment, really. It really is a payment system and a currency, and if you neglect one, you lose the other too. So we have a whole circular economy that we're building up here. Me and my other half, Joyce, we call it Bitcoin Valley, where the whole point is to get people spending it and actually using it as a currency, not just using it as a store of value, because just going pure Michael Saylor and paying for your Bitcoin pizza with dollars instead of Bitcoin is really, eventually we lose a lot of what Bitcoin is, and probably the whole thing, if people have that mentality too much. Like really, you're supposed to spend it. It is money, and money needs to have a certain amount of movement to keep the network alive. So that's super important, and people have it's kind of to Bitcoin's detriment that it goes up so much that no one ever wants to spend it. Spend and replace is just as valid, as only spending dollars, and it keeps Bitcoin alive, right? So, very important aspect of it.
Do you think that if we get the majority of Bitcoiners back into a spend and replace mindset, that the quote unquote price of Bitcoin, which is not the price of Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, but the exchange rate between Bitcoin and dollars, do you think that will still keep going up? Because it's not really, is the exchange rate going up a function of people hanging on to it and not selling it? Or is it simply a function of the fact that Bitcoin is the future of money and it's growing to represent the entirety of the world's economy divided by 21 million?
Both. Sorry to be blunt.
Price of Bitcoin is a psyop and it's organic. it's both of them together. It's the hodling and it's the fact that it's the world's greatest money. So, talk to me a little bit about, because I do want to march through your story, because there's the block wars in there too, but I'm kind of a tangent person. Tell me a little bit more about Bitcoin Valley.
Yeah.
Where is this and what is that?
This is up in Comox Valley in Canada, where I live. I've been with my other half since 2018, and we've been orange pilled the entire time. And this a lot of people have been listening to what she's been talking about, because a lot of people, Canada's really bad. Like people put a brave face on it, but Canada's like screwed up. Most middle class people are forgoing dental care at this point because they just can't afford it. So that's not like people that are broke, right? That's literally middle class people with mortgages and stuff like that. They can't afford dental care, and it's really messed up. And so she's been telling all these, she's in all these Facebook groups where people are like, moms struggling, and, there's like a sale on at Walmart, you can get this and stuff. Like people really like trying to make it work, though, because COVID like ruined Canada's economy, or I mean the government ruined Canada's economy and used COVID as an excuse, of course. But, so she's been talking for years to all these people about Bitcoin, and it's so frustrating, right? It's God's work, because she'll sit there and half the time some XRP moron will come in and be like, no, this is the future. And and she has to deal with all this and counter it, and you know, so people have been listening to her, and it's been years now. So people are like, well, you know what? She's been going on about this forever, and she seems to be right. So she just started a movement and was like, all right, circular economy, let's go. And you should have her on at some point, because she's very good at orange pilling people, and it's mainly just psychological elements. Like, ignore people when they're like, Bitcoin's a scam. Don't get like egotistical or like push back on it. Just ignore it and just be like, well, Bitcoin's good, and it can do a couple of things, and you might be interested. And then like, oh, I'm not interested. It's a scam. Just be like, just ignore it. And then they see another business adopt it in the community, and they go, oh, maybe this thing's for real, actually. And because you didn't get in a stupid fight with them, they just quietly change their own opinion and pretend they never said that. Whereas if you get like, if you're like, no, you're wrong, if you start going down that rabbit hole, then they'll never accept it because they have to be right. Yeah, so just like ignore them. This was like a very advanced orange pilling technique. And also there's other stuff like, people are just terrified of looking like they're a Trump supporter or something in Canada. Completely unacceptable here. So you have to avoid all these political connotations, you know. So you're just talking about, you got to use very careful language to make sure people don't feel like, oh, I can't accept Bitcoin. Isn't that bad for the environment? I'm going to have a bunch of people come in here and complain. You have to avoid all those triggers. Does that make sense? Like, it's... Yeah, there's all that stuff is like, it's, and you're not trying to tell people, oh, you'll get really rich adopting this. You're just trying to tell them this isn't going to hold up your line in your coffee shop and make people spend ages trying to pay. You don't need to keep the Bitcoins if you don't want. You can have them convert to CAD automatically. And no one's going to come and call you a murderer or destroying or boiling the oceans if you adopt it. Look at this business. They're doing it and they're doing fine. Like, that's the kind of angle you want to take with it.
So Joyce is persisting in the orange pilling of local businesses in the valley where you all live, and through her dogged efforts is slowly turning that stretch of Canada into Bitcoin Valley.
Exactly.
Let's go.
That's awesome.
Airplane flight alert.
For sure.
If we're allowed to leave the country, we don't know where we are anymore. They might not let us outside of America here, McCann. They might be like, no. You need to stay here and earn money so we can tax it. Let's go back to that moment that I heard right there, which I've never heard before. During the first halving, there was a squad of miners who wanted to change Bitcoin's rules in so much as continuing to pay themselves 50 Bitcoin per block. That's crazy.
Yep. I don't know how widely people were concerned about that. I wasn't that deep in it yet. I didn't understand like the kinds of implications of forks or anything like that. I didn't understand all this technical stuff yet. This didn't come until 2017 when I used Linux for the first time, and you know, because I wanted to be part of the UASF movement. But so unfortunately, I don't have a lot of insight I can offer you there. I just know it was a thing. Some miners were like, we're going to carry on paying ourselves 50 Bitcoins a block. And it didn't work out. But it was the first halving, right? So it was uncharted territory for everyone. A lot of people just thought Bitcoin will die. Like, there'll be this thing called a mining death spiral. That was a meme where they're like, that's it. Like, miners just got a 50% pay cut, therefore they'll all quit. And because they all quit, that shatters confidence in it, which means the price falls as well. So all the miners are just going to turn off, and it's going to be a cascading death. That was that was the doomsday theory around the halving, and the rationale some people had for why we needed to cancel it and make it so that people pay 50 Bitcoins forever. To be honest, people still push that stupid narrative. Peter Todd still pushes that today. And he's also the guy that pushed the stupid change to Core 30 that started this whole war. So, like, a lot of people still don't have the right, like, have a mentality that thinks Bitcoin can actually succeed with with the monetary policy Satoshi added at the beginning.
But what's interesting for me to hear is that there was some unnamed Bitcoin mechanic back in that day who was fighting for Satoshi's original vision, unbeknownst to you, and now you have assumed that role in this latest round of debate around how Bitcoin should operate. Like, even though you didn't know there was somebody like you in that moment who was like, no, we must continue with Satoshi's vision, chop this sucker in half and carry along, right? So,
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know the size of the players involved, so I don't know. Like maybe it was like one guy made a forum post and wrote a client that would ignore the halving or something. I don't really know. I should research this more because it's really interesting, and I just don't know. It'll all be there on the same forums, but I didn't start paying attention to the forums until 2013. That was when I lived on BitcoinTalk.org, which was the main forum for Bitcoin, and that I still have an account there, and that's still like we have this meme that if you have a good idea for a change you want to make to Bitcoin, it's on BitcoinTalk.org, and they discussed it in 2011 and realized it was a bad idea. So every now and again you get this meme like, I just found out about Bitcoin and I'm here to fix it. You get these like dudes show up like, we need to do this, like we need to make blocks bigger, or we need to whatever it is. And there's always just someone being like, yeah, that was discussed at this point 14 years ago and we realized it was a bad idea then. So just go do your research and stop trying to fix something you don't understand yet. Like that's kind of a fun meme. I don't know if you've come across it before. It's like a superhero. I just found out about Bitcoin. I'm here to fix it.
So, how did it make? I mean, I guess I was going to ask how it made you feel to go. How did it make you feel to go through the first ever halving? Whether you were aware of this internal debate or not, like what was that moment like for you as a regular pleb, you might say, who was just using it as an uncensorable payment network?
I was mining too. I had a laptop that had a good graphics card in it, and I used that to mine Bitcoin. I managed to mine about 7 million sats with it, with a graphics card, which at the time was worth like not even 10 cents. So it felt like the biggest waste ever. Now, of course, that's worth like $8,000. So totally worth it. Way more than what I paid for the laptop, right? But so the halving sucked because I got a 50% pay cut. That's all. That was the only thing that really happened for me. I wasn't like reassured that Bitcoin can survive halvings and stuff. I just wasn't that worried about it to be concerning myself with stuff like that yet. I didn't have a big stake in it, so I was like, it was new. No one really knew if this thing was going to work out or not. It was mainly just my FU to the state, right? And I thought it would fail probably like everything else does. I didn't have anything like the confidence in it that I do now. It's stood all these tests, right? We've had developers go bad, and we've had exchanges collapse, and we've had countries make it illegal. Like we've had all this stuff happen now, and it survived. So you get to have way more confidence in it. Back in the day, like it was just a tiny little software project. There was no way that I would have had the confidence to be like, yep, this is the future. It's going to eat everything. Like there was no Michael Saylor and like hedge funds throwing billions of dollars at it. None of that had happened yet. And that gives you a lot of confidence.
All right.
Wow. I've benefited so much in 2025 from all the things that happened before me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I just like, I don't even know what questions to ask. I'm just like, in this world, I imagine it as like black and white, sort of. And it was just like I don't know, less than 10 years ago.
It's crazy to think about all the people who have dedicated their lives to working for Bitcoin.
Yeah, and that's another one. People say like Bitcoin will just, it will survive anything. And I'm like, well, that's thanks to Bitcoiners. There's a lot of people that have done a lot of work to make sure this thing remained functional, and mainly it's Luke. Luke is the main guy that's done pretty much everything. So, well, that's an exaggeration. He hasn't done everything, of course, but he's done so much for the system. And there were forks back then. 2013, there was a fork. I was looking at like I said, there were no wallets, or there was no Sparrow or anything like that. I just had a Bitcoin node on my laptop, and then in 2013, this orange bar came across the top of it that was like, warning, something's broken in Bitcoin. And I was like, what is this? This was March 2013. And there was an accidental fork. There was a bug in Bitcoin's database and two different versions of Bitcoin were doing different things. And there were two different blockchains. And phone calls were getting made, and exchanges and like mining pools were all trying to figure out how to deal with it. And Luke fixed everything just by making calling up the right people and being like, right, here's the emergency plan, here's what we're going to do. And he rescued the whole system. And he's done that like 5 times now. So I do get touchy when people are like, oh, Bitcoin survives anything. I'm like, yeah, but only because people actually make the effort to fix it. Because back then you did have people that were like, oh, just leave it. The free market is going to sort out, the divergence in the 2 different chains. Just let the free market sort it out. And I'm like, no, you needed a human who cared about the system to actually fix it. And that's a really important point. I hope people understand that, because Bitcoin can totally have people co-opt it and bad things happen to it, and you have to be vigilant. That's the old anarchist thing, man. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and people are not necessarily that vigilant when it comes to Bitcoin. They can be apathetic. Then it can turn into a really bad tool, actually. So I'd keep that in mind too. Bitcoin is great, but you have a responsibility to keep it great. It doesn't just come for free. The thing people fall back on is the idea that there's so many to whom Bitcoin is really important that they will look after it, even if you're lazy about it. But eventually, you might see something going wrong in the place and be like, well, no one seems to care about this, so I guess it's on me to care about it. And that's kind of one of the situations I've been in lately, but I'm not alone. I don't mean to imply that I am. There's plenty of people that agree with me that Bitcoin has gone down a really bad path since 2023, roughly. And I guess we'll get into that at some point.
Oh, yeah, we definitely will. But not on today's episode, because there is, there is so much to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is so big. The history is so big. Your story is so big that we will never fit it into a single chat about sats. So we do ask each of our guests if they would be willing to come back on in 9 months to give us an update on their Bitcoin baby. Would you be willing to do that for us, Mechanic?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in 9 months, probably we'll have forked, and things are going to look quite different then. So it'd be nice to look back at it. I can't really set the stage for it without it going off on like an hour-long talk about where we're at now. So,
I mean, he's predicting a hard fork?
No, not a
hard
fork.
Okay, soft fork. All right.
Yeah.
And we got to do a short stack on the difference between a soft fork and a hard fork for all of our beginners.
Yeah. So Anna Bevan, then. We're just going to do a whole bunch of short stacks for Anna Bevan.
Simple Steve has been teaching me over Telegram the difference between the two. But anyways, when you come back on in 9 months, yeah, we do want to look back on that time and see what has happened. But we also need to jump into your time on the Bitcoin Talk Forum. We need to jump into your experience through the block wars. Mm-hmm. We need to jump into your experience. At some point, you leave England, and then there's the pandemic. There's this nasty turn from 2020. I don't even know if the Bitcoin Baby update will have all of Mechanic's torque in it.
Definitely gonna need
it might be the Bitcoin toddler update when you're back on in 18 months. I'm not even sure how long it's going to take to get Mechanic's story out, but I'm going to document it on this here dang show. What do you think a brand new Bitcoiner can do? And maybe even someone who hasn't even stacked their first sats. What's the first thing they can do to start protecting Bitcoin?
Understand how it works and fight for it to become decentralized. The main aspect of because this crypto, right? This was a very different intro than I had, because there was no crypto when I showed up. There was just a sort of interesting side conversation constantly going on about altcoins. And that was a subsection on the Bitcoin Talk forums. There wasn't really the hostility towards crypto until Ethereum showed up. And then suddenly it was like, okay, the scammers have arrived. But before that, it was just kind of interesting. Like, oh, what if we did this? What if we did that? Like, there wasn't really the same hostility or the same marketing. So these things like Litecoin and Feathercoin and Primecoin and all that stuff and Vertcoin, they all existed, but no one really minded them. Like, everyone in them was openly just a Bitcoiner. Now, like, you have all these altcoiners being like, we will destroy Bitcoin and we will replace it with better technology and all that stuff. So a lot of people end up now, sadly, because that exists, with that superior marketing. Like, Bitcoiners have to market it themselves, whereas scam coin devs will raise money and have proper marketing and all that stuff. So Like that, scam coiners are like how a lot of people get into Bitcoin. They start with crypto and then they realize Bitcoin somehow is better than crypto. And we had this whole meme, Bitcoin, not crypto, big deal. And a lot of people, like a lot of Bitcoin maxis, like younger people in the space, not younger, but I mean people that have spent less time in Bitcoin, a lot of them understand Bitcoin has something special that crypto doesn't. And the most revealing thing you can do that, in my opinion, should get you to where I am mentally with Bitcoin is to ask why. Why is Bitcoin somehow different and unique versus all the other cryptos out there? Very important question, and most people don't have a very concise answer for it, or even any understanding at all. They have all these sort of, well, it's because Satoshi was anonymous, or because he went first, which he didn't, because Bitcoin, I maintain, it wasn't the first crypto, it was the last. And because it just has to work, and everything else is just an after the fact. Like if Bitcoin dies, everything else dies in the crypto space. Let's be honest. So again, what is it that makes it special? And my answer to that is always that it has decentralized validation and verification of everything that goes on in the system. So when miners spend $300,000 of electricity mining a block on average, or whatever it is they pay, they're jumping through a hoop. They're satisfying an incredibly high target difficulty as enforced by the network. And the network is doing that in a decentralized way. So when I mine a block and the network says that block was valid, that network is someone that's enforcing a rule in such a distributed way that it makes sense for me to be like, yeah, that's not going to change anytime soon. And I look at that like language learning. Like I will learn a language if there's like 1 million people around me that speak it, and it would be really useful, and they're not about to change their mind and stop speaking it tomorrow. Whereas in crypto, you don't have any of those guarantees. You don't have like a game that can't have the rules changed on it in the same way. Like Ethereum, they can just change it in 5 minutes if they want, and they have loads of times. It looks more like a central group of bureaucrats changing and moving goalposts on you, which is the whole point of getting away from fiat, is to get away from games, right? So Bitcoin, if the rules can't be changed easily, what's the difference? And it comes down to culture and distribution and decentralization. And that is, in effect, a reflection of people enforcing the rules with the software they run. So a Bitcoiner is someone that runs a Bitcoin node. And the nodes, the fact that there are lots and lots of those nodes and miners have to acquiesce to the will of those nodes is what keeps Bitcoin unriggable. So all that is to say, why is Bitcoin different than crypto? Because Bitcoin has loads of nodes and crypto doesn't. Because crypto tries to dump a bunch of features on top of what Bitcoin already is and reinvent the wheel and sell you on additional features like privacy, like scalability, like speed, things like that. And the cost of that is no one runs nodes because all those features come at the cost of the people enforcing the rules, because they have more rules to verify are being followed. So if this is all making sense so far, I'm telling you that Bitcoin is unique because people can run nodes in this ecosystem. And not only can they, it's a big part of our culture that you should, whereas that doesn't exist in any other crypto. There are exceptions, kind of, but my favorite example is no one runs an Ethereum node because no one's going to shell out 100 grand in computation power to be able to run an Ethereum node, and their culture doesn't care if you do. The devs will just change the rules of it and expect you to follow. Whereas in Bitcoin, they can't do that. So if someone wants to say 21 million, we're breaking that and going above it, everyone running a node basically has to agree to make their own savings worth less and to go along with it, which no one's really going to do. Why would they do that? So you need, the only people that will do money printing are bureaucrats that don't have any of the money themselves. And in Bitcoin, there isn't really an entity like that. And if one of them forms, like the developers might want to do that for some reason, how are they going to be able to get that through? There's too many nodes telling them they can't. So that's really the important point here. Bitcoin has nodes. I hope that I didn't waffle on too long there, because that is what makes it unique. And when anything comes along that threatens your ability to run a node in a practical way, not just like you can run an Ethereum node, like, I have to realistically be able to do this on my home computer without spending thousands and thousands of dollars. When anything threatens that, like big blocks, which is what the entire block size war was about, or the spam war today, again, why are you dumping stuff onto the back of nodes for additional features in Bitcoin, like having massive blocks so everyone can buy coffee on chain, or arbitrary data storage? Why are you making nodes bear the cost of this? You're just going to make less people run nodes, and then you have centralized verification, and then bang, we're just a crypto like everything else. That's basically my entire perspective on any war that has to be fought in Bitcoin. Is, are you going to be able to run a node? Are other people going to be able to do it too? Is there going to be a point? I don't even remember what sparked me off on this ramble, but that's basically like everything in Bitcoin to me is, can you run a node? And if someone's coming along that says, let's do this awesome thing on Bitcoin that makes it twice as expensive to run a node, then it's dead, because you're just centralizing verification. And this isn't like a numbers game, it's a trend thing. If there are more people running nodes than there were yesterday, Bitcoin is getting more decentralized and healthier. If the opposite, then it's getting worse. So nodes are on a downtrend versus total number of Bitcoiners. That's not good, and it can't survive like that. That's a fact. It will just end up centralized, and when it's centralized, you can do stuff like make there be more than 21 million Bitcoin, right? So you can reorg the blockchain, you can do 51% attack. All of that becomes much more possible the more centralized it gets. So it has to be decentralized, and people have to fight to keep it that. That's the only real fight in Bitcoin. Everything else is downstream of that.
That's wild. So if you want to get started, what I heard is learn about how Bitcoin works and run a node. And that was crazy to hear him say a Bitcoiner is someone who runs a Bitcoin node, right? That's the first time I've heard that. So love that. Let's turn it over to Ithaca Hummus.
Yes, please. Ithaca is our sponsor, is one of our sponsors. And I don't know if you are a hummus fan, but we are huge hummus fans.
It's been smelling like French onion the whole time, which has made the
Gross.
studio smell. You don't like that? Dude, it smells amazing.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Yum.
But Ithaca reminds us to
Buy the dip. And after Bitcoin Mechanics episode, Ithaca Hummus is going to remind us to run a node.
Yes.
So we are going to act as your taste buds in the studio today for the French onion hummus flavor.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Dude, do you not like French onion soup, or what's going on here? Because this just tastes amazing.
I believe you, man. No, I love onion. I love garlic. Don't worry, I'm just being silly.
Oh gosh, I was like, no, that's such a cozy meal.
Massive, yummy, caramelized umami flavor.
Totally.
Dude, I literally am going to be mining Bitcoin Mechanics story for at least 2 more episodes guaranteed. And the good news is, since it's once every 9 months, the same way Bitcoin targets a new block every 10 minutes, he's going to constantly have more life.
I know.
In between episodes. I may never get to the end of his story, which is exactly what I want. So
Well, let's carry on, like, because I've got like there's you've got the block size wars, and that was like when I had to like first off 2013. Let me carry on with the story a little bit, because in 2013 I've suddenly realized that like I can get rich off of this thing. That hadn't hit me until a couple of years into my journey. In 2011, it was all about banks are corrupt. Payment networks like PayPal are kicking people off and censoring platforms. I can't donate money to WikiLeaks, stuff like that. There was none of this like, I can get rich off of this, which is what so many people come into Bitcoin for. And that wasn't there yet. And in 2013, that was my first bull market where I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Suddenly, everything I bought just like 500x'd in the span of a year. And then I went through my first bear market in 2014, and it was just one of the hardest things I'd ever been through. Like, so, I mean, and then I got used to it. 2018, I didn't care as much. In 2022, I was like, whatever, you know, it just didn't matter to me anymore. You get used to the bear markets, but the price stuff takes a long time to get used to, right? So just thought I'd point that out. And then, you know, I got so sidetracked with all the technical stuff in 2017 that I stopped caring about the price so much. It became less relevant.
Wow.
Yeah, that is definitely encouraging to me, as we've established that I am in my refresh.
Clark
refresh.
Moody dashboard price refresh mode.
That's right.
All right. So
All that matters at the start for a lot of people is price now. again, I was lucky because I got in before the price really was a thing, and I got in before crypto was really a thing. So Bitcoin really was just like a beautiful tool for freedom for me. It wasn't like a get rich quick thing. A lot of people are here, they come for the get rich and they stay for the freedom. I just came for the freedom because that was all there really was at the beginning.
Totally. That's great. I feel like that should go on a t-shirt.
I'm actually, a
you
beautiful
testing?
tool for freedom.
Well, that's
The episode, the title of this episode.
Funny, I was literally going to tell you that when we finished.
yeah, I think that's a known quote. Is don't attribute it to me because loads of people said that. I think it's like come for the gain, stay for the freedom, or something like that. I don't remember exactly how people phrase it, but that's the meme for sure.
Well, here on Sat Chats, we believe in value for value, and we would like to make you an offer today in exchange for coming on our show. We would like to give you the choice between $50 in fiat or $50 in Bitcoin, which at today's exchange rate is 48,150 Satoshis.
What
I'll
would you
take
like
it.
to use?
I'll take the Bitcoin, of course.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Okay.
I don't even know how you.
Bitcoin became like, the 50
Yeah,
bucks
but
is
that-
great.
Cash sounds great.
Well, I don't even know how you'd get that to me because I'm not even in America. So
Exactly.
that's why we Bitcoin, because it doesn't care about borders.
It doesn't. So, Mechanic, you bring our show's scoreboard to 140 who have stacked the sats with us here on the show, along with 9 who chose the cash, even after chatting about sats with us. But when they come back on in 9 months, we're going to keep working on them.
Yes.
Is there anywhere that you'd like to send our Satillionaires if they want to spend more time with you or with anything you're involved in?
I mean, if you're a miner, mine with Ocean. I work for Ocean. I haven't even mentioned that at all because I worked for a couple of companies in the space which did huge things. So I worked for Start9, and they are responsible for a quarter of the nodes on the network. I work for Ocean now, which is responsible for decentralizing mining. So all this is a lot. Like I didn't even get halfway into like what I've done in the space. So hopefully I'll get into that next time. But that's where I should really send people. Start9.com, my former employer, and still I'm a big champion of their product. And ocean.xyz for anyone mining. That's you'll earn more money there than you would on other mining pools. And you'll have a lot more fun because you get to make your own blocks and write your own name as you being responsible for the block. So when you mine a block on Ocean, it doesn't say Ocean, it says whatever you wrote, which gives miners some agency and ownership over Bitcoin again. So definitely those are the places I'd send you.
Well, let's go. Do you know who Scott 9000 is, McKenna?
Yeah, of course. He's a friend.
He came into the studio since he lives right near where we are. He came in yesterday.
Where are you guys?
We're in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, man, you should have had I've got a friend. Well, the guy that runs the back end for Ocean lives in North Carolina. And our launch was in South Carolina in Enery near Greenville.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah.
We have a lot of
get him
history.
on. We're gonna get Joyce on. We're
Yeah.
gonna get Luke on, and I might
Sweet.
have to connect my little laundry room bidax into your mining pool now. Because look, Scott, I don't know if you can see that on the camera. Scott,
I can see it.
signed my bidax, dude, and now I feel absolutely metal that I have this. It looks amazing, and it's my prized possession. And I showed it to everybody at the Bitcoin meetup last night and got the reactions I wanted because I called my wife and said, "Honey, Scott signed my bidax," and she was like, "I thought you were gonna tell me that it solo mined a block and now we have 3 Bitcoin." I'm like, "Honey, can you be as excited about this with me as I am? Like, give me a break, lady."
All right, Satillionaires, if you love today's episode and want to hear more about Mechanics' life story, which is still blowing my mind,
yeah.
click subscribe at your chance to win 2 million Satoshis when we get to 10,000 subscribers. We want to get there by Christmas, so help us get there. Please hit subscribe. Don't delay. And also, if you'd like to find out more ways to support and sponsor and even grab your slot in the studio, whether it's in person or in the virtual studio, do that in our show notes. And Sat Chats is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice, and our guests' views are their own. Until next time, and another chat about sats, keep stacking them sats.
Let's go. And maybe run a node. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.